good afternoon. It's the late summer and we're in the late summer sunshine here at Bowood. This is a very special place. Lots of memories from Bowood that you might have. We're just outside of Caen and we are surrounded by the beautiful landscaping of Lancelot Capability Brown. This day, 300 years ago, he was baptised and he went on to change the nature and the shape and the feel of Britain's countryside, and he designed this wonderful landscape which we are in today. We are live here at Bowood and we'd love to hear from you. If you have memories of this place, if like me you went down the death slide one too many times, we'd love to hear about it, and any questions you have about Bowood and Capability Brown. I am joined by Jo Johnston, who is the curator at Bowood House. This is really a typical Capability Brown landscape, isn't it?
It really is. It's really the epitome of his fully developed style as we come to know Capability Brown, his version of the English landscape garden.
Tell me about the lake, because I associate this lake with Bowood.
Yes, and obviously one of the main things that Capability Brown did was to create this wonderful 35-acre lake. I think it's about a mile long. And there was a small rectangular pond here before his time, fed by two very small streams from the south. And he created this wonderful lake, which was really meant to look like a river meandering beside the big house here at Bowood.
And it does actually. It moves. It feels like an active lake.
Yeah, it does move. There's a huge dam at the far end there, and a lot of engineering involved actually in creating the lake and creating silt ponds and changing levels of water, and then huge engineering feat to create the dam at the far end.
Tell me why you think he was such a genius, why he was the Shakespeare of horticulture.
Well, I think he worked extremely hard, but he was actually a real visionary. He could imagine what the landscape would look like after he'd worked his magic. And of course, nowadays, we're lucky enough to be able to see everything grown up. He planted all these thousands of trees, which he wouldn't have seen come to their full height in his time. And we have the benefit of it now, really, which is lovely.
He must have been a very good businessman to persuade all of these landowners to say, look, I've got this idea. You can't see it yet, but please pay me to do it.
He was a very astute businessman. He had the artistic design ability, but he also had the good business sense. And he must have spent an awful lot of his time on the road, because he travelled incessantly between all these clients' houses. And yeah, he just worked really hard. And there's lots of elements to a Capability Brown landscape that were very appealing to his clients. For instance, he planted thousands of trees, but they were for timber. They were to be cut for timber. He had sheep grazing in the grounds, what looked like a very natural English landscape. But the sheep, of course, were farmed. They were kept at bay from getting too close to the house by the ha-ha. And then at Bowood in particular, he had planned for there to be a mill at the pond head at the Great Dam. I don't think it ever happened. And that's where the lovely cascades are that they put in only 20 so years after Capability Brown's time. But of course that would use the energy from the water, really quite a visionary thing at the time.
So he was practical. As well as having this huge vision for a beautiful view, he knew how to make the land pay for itself, really.
Yes, and I think that was what was so appealing to his clients, was that not only did it look beautiful, but it was a very productive landscape.
Now, I've heard the term ha-ha used a few times today, so describe what a ha-ha is for me.
Actually, in Capability Brown's contract that we have here at Bowood in the archives, he always calls it a sunken fence, not a ha-ha. So it's really a big ditch with a sort of wall built into one side of it, and to stop grazing animals getting up close to the house. So it is a sunken fence.
Okay. I can hear the geese in the background, a gaggle of geese running up the hill.
Lots of geese.
We are looking for your memories of Bowood today. So if you have spent some time here in the summer holidays as a child, what your memories of Bowood, of that wonderful house and of these grounds, that would be brilliant. Some questions coming in on our Facebook Live. We are broadcasting live on facebook.com/BBC Wiltshire. Tom wants to know, did he always use lakes? Is a lake a very typical Brown asset?
It not always. He didn't always use them, but it is a very typical Brownian feature of a landscape. I mean, the lake at Blenheim, I think, is the biggest, but it is very definitely a Brownian feature, very popular, because it was designed to look like a lovely, great river passing by the big house. You have to see Brown landscapes in the context of the house as well.
Let's talk about the house, actually, because, I mean, we've got this wonderful facade of Bowood House, and it's just glowing in the sunshine, that glorious honey-coloured stone. This actually is just one part of the original house. I didn't realise that just to the right of the house, that was the house, and it's not there anymore.
Yes, until 1955, there was what we call the big house at Bowood. Now, the little house is not so little because it's about 45 rooms, and the big house was about 90 rooms. But the house that you see today was really built as a service wing to the big house. Now, having said that it's a service wing, it's a very grand service wing.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind being part of the service staff living there.
No, well, it was the front of it was designed by Robert Adam, based on Diocletian's palace in what's now Split in Croatia. So it is a rather grand service wing, actually. But yes, until 1955, there was a big house here, which had the most amazing view right the way down the Capability Brown Lake.
And tell me about the history of this house. We spoke to Lord Lansdowne earlier. How things have changed over the last 50 years here at Bowood.
Well, so the major change is the knocking down of the big house in 1955. And that really enabled Lord Lansdowne's father to sort of consolidate his inheritance. Very unfortunately, his two cousins, the 7th Marquis and his younger brother, were killed during the Second World War. And so the title and everything passed to Lord Lansdowne's father. And the very different climate after the war. The house was in a terrible, terrible state of repair. And really the only way he could keep his inheritance was to consolidate and knock down the big house and make the little house more habitable for him to live in. I mean, the other big change is that in 1972, Lord Lansdowne's father handed over the running of Bowood to him, and in 1975 Lord Lansdowne opened to the public. So that's been a very big change.
Hence all those memories of the death slide for me, and lots of happy days walking around here.
Yes, my children used to badger to come over to Bowood to go on the death slide as well.
Some lovely memories coming in. Vivian says, hello from Texas. She's watching us and listening from Texas via Facebook Live. Barry says he loved playing in the caves.
Oh yeah, there's a lovely cave actually. Down by the Cascades, there's a hermit's cave, but there's also a cave that you can walk through. And it's not so much fun in these days because children use their mobile phones now to light the way. But
that takes all the fun away from it.
I think it does rather. But when my children were small, we used to go through the cave. I used to push my son in the front because I was a bit scared. And it's pitch black in the middle of it, but you can walk through from one side to the other. That's part of the Cascades down at the pond head.
I love that there's someone in Texas who's remembering the caves of Bowood. That's excellent. Let's go back to Capability Brown, because you've had an exhibition here in the house and you've had guided walks around the gardens as well. Tell me what you've uncovered through looking through the archives of Capability Brown and his relationship with Bowood.
Well, it was a hugely ambitious project here at Bowood, actually. And if you think that they only had the very basic tools of the day to dig out all the area for the lake and to sort of sculpt the grass on this side of of the lake, between the lake and the house. They didn't have any diggers like we would have now. They didn't have any computer-aided design or anything like that. It was all done with very basic tools, really. Horses and carts, wheelbarrows and shovels, and a lot of manpower and a lot of effort. And I know in the archives I found suddenly, at the start of Capability Brown's work here, I found a bill for 38 wheelbarrows. So that was, suddenly they needed 38 wheelbarrows to cart all the mud and everything away from the site. And it's just, well, it's amazing what he achieved here, really. Another thing that he did was to lower the hill just behind us here.
Okay.
Clark's Hill there. Lord Shelburne wanted it a little bit lower, so Capability Brown lowered it.
What a demand. If you're a landscape gardener and someone tells you to lower that hill,
Yes.
I mean, that must have been a huge feat.
A huge job, yes. And as I say, when you think of the tools that they had at their disposal, very, very difficult to do. So, yes, and at the same time, he made the little island that we can see down there as well.
Oh, really?
But we know all this because there's a letter written from Hampton Court in 1768 among the archives here. And, of course, Capability Brown at that time was the royal gardener, so he lived at Hampton Court. He was George III's gardener. And he writes to Lord Shelburne at the time, just sort of saying there was a little bit of extra cost involved in lowering the hill and forming the island. So, you know, he was paid 4,300, I think, for his work here. It's
And that would
a
have
huge
been,
amount.
What, in the early 1760s?
It's in 1760s, 1763 to 68. Most of the work here was done, but the
Huge
planting
amount of
carried
money
on.
that he would have been
Well,
paid in
yeah.
today's money.
Well, typical wage of an agricultural labourer at the time was about £1 a day, which is now 5p a day.
Right.
So £4,300 was really a very large amount of money.
So he made an absolute fortune. And we have got lots of people watching on Facebook Live, which is excellent. Thank you very much for being here. We are broadcasting live from Bowood House. Hello to Barbel from Germany. This is fab that we've got viewers from all over the world. Gordon from Texas. David in Melksham. Hello, David. Patricia from Bridgewater. And someone from Weston-super-Mare. Jackie in Weston-super-Mare, all watching us live. I love that we can take you to the gardens. It's such a special thing. It's somewhere that you might have visited when you were younger and maybe brought your family here for picnics and adventures in the park. The fact that we can bring you this wonderful view on such a stunning day is excellent. And it was today 300 years ago that Capability Brown was baptised, and to see his landscape in this wonderful sunshine is very special. Tom says, are there other designers who emulate his style? I mean, do you think that's possible that other designers have taken on some of his ideas and recreated them, Jo?
Well, I think this is one of the problems, actually, because his was a very fashionable style in the middle of the 18th century. And I think in some cases it's quite difficult to get a definite Capability Brown attribution to your landscape, because obviously he was much copied at the time. And I know I, for one, always thought that Stour Head here in Wiltshire, for instance, was designed by Capability Brown, but in fact it wasn't. I think Richard Colt Hoare sort of decided he wanted a similar design, but perhaps didn't want to pay Capability Brown to actually do it. I don't know.
Well, I
don't
can
know.
understand now knowing what he charged.
Well, yes, but I mean, he was a very fashionable designer of the time. So anybody who was anybody had Capability Brown. And really, we're very lucky here that we've got a very good collection of archives to sort of back up what Capability Brown did here. We've got his original plan for the place and all sorts of things. So it's really good that we've got all that. But I know there are about 250 places attributed to Capability Brown. And I think a few more might be coming out of the woodwork this year with the tercentenary celebrations. But yes, he was very definitely copied. Yeah.
It's really nice to celebrate his work and what he did and how he did it. Why do you think it's important that places like this retain his style? Because things come in and out of fashion. So why is it important that this view stays like this?
Well, you only have to look at it, really, don't you? I mean, it is so beautiful. it's what we think of as just English landscape style, isn't it? It is quite peculiarly English in many ways. I don't know. I suppose it's easier to maintain than lots of very formal gardens and formal flower beds. So, yeah, I mean, it is beautiful. It's just beautiful to look at. Every time I drive down into work, I just think I'm so lucky to work here in this landscape.
It's so special, and it's so nice to know more about the man who had this vision, who could see into the future almost and imagine what it would be like. Jo Johnston, thank you so much for your time, curator at Bowood House. And what a point, really, that imagine coming in and seeing this view every day, and because of the work here from the gardeners and the people that keep the house, we can enjoy Capability Brown's vision 260 years on after he created it. So, yeah, the lake itself, the clumps of trees, that rolling greenery, all of the work of a bit of a garden genius, Lancelot Capability Brown, and we're celebrating him at Bowood. Thank you very much for watching and for all of your comments. Anyone who perhaps hasn't been to Bowood for a while, share this around so they can relive those wonderful memories at Bowood near Caen.